You are listening to the Two and Out CFL podcast, a proud member of the Canadian Football Podcast Network.
Looking to be the guy backing up for Steve, or not Steve, but Luke Tasker. Look at that.
Okay, Rod.
Grab some poutine and a double-double. It's time for the Two and Out CFL podcast.
Now they have to kick it out, and they do!
Every week, Travis Currah.
Does anybody still care about this podcast?
And Brazilian Ty
Hunters are people too.
talk fantasy football, bring you the latest in CFL news, and sprinkle in a little bit of nonsense.
Are you kidding? This is unbelievable!
Ready, set, hunt!
And we are a part of the Alberta Podcast Network, locally grown, community supported. I'm Travis Currah with Brazilian Ty. Ty's just getting back to BC after a week at home. Ty, I assume it was a productive week at home.
Define productive.
How you feeling?
Tired. It was a long day today. Alarm was set for 6. I was up at 4:30. On the road by 10 after 5-ish. But I gained an hour coming back to camp, so that's nice. But
Right.
I had a couple nights on my days off get away from me, one would say. So, it's nice to come back to work and get some rest.
Yeah, go to work and get some rest.
Yeah.
This episode of Two and Out is brought to you by the Alberta Association of Optometrists, proudly celebrating a century of caring for Albertans. It happens. Parents can easily miss their child's eye problems. Issues can occur in only one eye, making them difficult to notice. The earlier an eye health or vision problem is identified, the more likely it can be corrected. The I See, I Learn program provides an eye exam and free glasses if needed for kindergarten-aged children. 25% of kids begin first grade with an undiagnosed eye problem. To book your child's eye exam, please visit optometrist.ab.ca. The Alberta Association of Optometrists represents almost 800 doctors of optometry in over 80 communities across the province. Members are highly trained, regulated health professionals who provide primary eye health and vision care to Albertans. Learn more at optometrists.ab.ca.
In the huddle with Currah and Ty on the Two and Out podcast.
All right, Ty, it seems like this might be a podcast that we could just throw over to the Turf District, fellas and gal, because holy man, the Elks are making news, not all of it positive. Let's start with, well, I guess something that just happened Sunday. We got news middle of the afternoon that 13-year veteran to the Edmonton Football Club, Calvin McCarty, is now a Calgary Stampeder.
Yeah.
This is Marty Jannetty right through the glass at the barbershop from Shawn Michaels. Like
100%. This is nuts. I don't get it. What a heel turn.
No kidding. Like, I get it from Calgary's perspective. Their longtime fullback, Charlie Power, he went down during the red and white scrimmage on Saturday. It looked like a non-contact injury.
But I've been thinking this the whole time when we were going over rosters. I'm like, these guys that retired, they didn't really retire yet.
Well, and another example of that is Derek Dennis. Well, and he never once said he did retire.
No.
He never did say that. He said he was going to take the year off. And it turns out, just judging by what he is saying, is that he wants to play. He just doesn't really want to play for Edmonton. So here's how I see it. Oh, here is what happened. He signed with Edmonton in January. Maybe he thought this was going to be his chance to be a starting left tackle for Trevor Harris. Make some good coin with the Edmonton Football Club. Well, Edmonton ends up signing Sir Vincent Rogers. Later, they work some playtime bonuses into Dennis's contract. maybe he says, well, unless Rogers or O'Donnell go down, there's the Canadians on the interior. Maybe there's not really a spot for me to play and meet those playtime bonuses to make the cash. I want to go somewhere else to play. So here we are. It's kind of a sticky situation.
And he said he was opting out anyways, and now he wants to play. Like, I get it. Like, everybody has the right to change their mind, but once he says he opts out or that he's not going to play this year, and then, the Elks don't really have to worry if they have Rogers and O'Donnell. Like you said, like, it's not going to be that big of an issue, and now he's making it an issue. It's having your cake and eating it too. You said you weren't going to play, so now you want to be traded or released so that you can play? Like, what'd you sign the contract for then?
Kind of an interesting thing here with Calvin McCarty, too, because we thought he was done. And if I look at Edmonton's point of view, they've got Tanner Green, the young fullback they drafted. He's from Alberta, from Lacombe, and I think they're pretty high on him. So they thought, hey, well, you know what? We're going to move on without our longtime guy, and then he comes back and goes to Calgary.
Well, but I mean, like, don't trade Dennis, and like, if he opted out, does he still get paid?
Right.
Like, why would you release him or trade him now? It's like, well, we have you under contract for this year. Why would we trade you or release you so you can go play against us?
Well, and who really knows what else is going on behind the scenes?
It's always something on that Twitter account, it seems.
Because the Elks also released Kenny Stafford, a part of their...
For the 800th time.
First round of cuts. Final cut down day, by the way, is this Friday. But what was interesting is that they said it was because of he wasn't a cultural fit in the locker room. That's a pretty... I don't know, man. You can read between the lines there and say, well, I
think they just kind of called him an a-hole. That's
what it looks like to me.
Like, I've been told that I don't fit into the culture of a room before. I get it.
And that can't feel good as a player, to see that in the media. So
no, and they can read between the lines. Everybody else knows what they mean when they say that. I'm guessing something might have happened. Because I don't see them just cutting him for no reason. I mean, he can still play.
Yeah, I think so too. As far as positive news goes, the Elks have signed their D coordinator and assistant head coach Noel Thorpe through 2022. I have really liked Noel Thorpe and his defenses. Sometimes I feel like he's been on teams, especially in Montreal, where the offense didn't do the defense any favors, and they were on the field 45 minutes a game.
Pretty hard to keep an offense out of the end zone when they start at your 35.
Yeah. So we'll see what he can get done in Edmonton, I think, with a good team. We'll say that. I think the Elks are going to be a pretty good team this coming season. I think that covers it for Edmonton. A lot going on there right now. Let's go to Winnipeg here, where they end up signing kicker Tyler Krapina. Darvin Adams is banged up, but here's the thing. Andrew Harris is also banged up. And
I'm guessing they probably have a remedy for that.
So first it was he left practice for an appointment. Then it was he's going to miss a couple weeks. Then it was, he ends up taking part a little bit, catching some balls through walkthrough, early practice, pulls up limping and looks very upset. I mean, is the guy that the offense runs through going to be missing a few weeks or a game here to start the season?
Well, and without him in their offensive scheme, it completely changes their game plan. And I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if Collaros is the guy that is going to succeed without Andrew Harris in the backfield.
I'm really excited to see what Collaros brings to the table this year, because if we remember in Hamilton, the year he got hurt, he was looking like he's going to be the MOP.
He's also not the same quarterback he was then, though, either.
That's true. Let's see what a year and a half off does for him, but he kind of put the team on his back at points during Winnipeg's Grey Cup run. If Harris misses, he's going to have to do that again.
But he doesn't have somebody in Chris Streveler where they can kind of split snaps. And like even when Streveler was in the game, you knew it was going to happen, and teams still couldn't stop it.
Right, exactly.
So
exactly. They also made a trade to acquire defensive back Alden Darby from the Argonauts for an offensive lineman in Terry Poole.
They just better hope that they don't have to play the Argos too many times, because I think it's been proven that could go poorly.
Maybe the Argos did see it up at training camp with those receivers and saying, Winnipeg, you can deal with them. But Richie Hall has been able to put players in positions to succeed in the past, and he probably will be able to do that as well, and he might be a good addition to that defense in Winnipeg. All right, we're going to preview the East Division here right now and do a little bit of a deep dive. And Ty, this is an exercise as much maybe for somebody listening as it is for me, trying to, juggle up those memories of what happened in 2019. What are these teams building off of to go into this year? Because it has felt like 7 or 8 years since there has been CFL football. So, I mean, do we even really need to look at 2019, or are these teams essentially building from scratch? But if you look, a lot of the cores of the teams are still around. Not really many of them have been, turned upside down. There has been a lot of roster turnover. There will be a lot of new names that we're going to have to learn and get used to as the season gets underway. But
especially with 2 draft classes in one.
Yeah, that too. The cores of the 9 teams, for the most part, they're still intact, and I think that really rings true for the Hamilton Tiger Cats, who went 15-3. In 2019, they only lost the one game inside their division, lost in the Grey Cup. But what really stood out to me is the defense that year. They lost in the Grey Cup, but they had the least points against in the entire CFL. That defense was firing in all cylinders in 2019, Ty.
Oh, and you have guys like, Andelike in the secondary, and Delvin Breaux was basically Revis Island 2.0, scared to throw over there, right? They're basically their whole defensive line, Jaguar Davis, Julian Hauser, Ted Laurent, Dillman, they're back. They lose a couple guys on the defensive line that, they didn't. With the rotations and everything that you do now, probably pretty big parts, but they can be replaced. They lose they lose one linebacker to another team, and the other 2 are Justin Tuggle and Lucas Coral that are free agents. But you're still bringing back Simone Lawrence, who's basically the heartbeat of that defense, and I just don't see where this team really lost a whole lot on that defensive side of the ball.
They ended up losing a few defensive backs, and Rico Murray and Richard Leonard and Breaux that you mentioned, but they were able to bring in Deontay Evans as well, coming over from Montreal. So they're able to...
And Jamal Roll, Mike Daly, and Frankie Williams are still there.
Yeah, they are. They still got tons of talent in that area. And even if you look at the offensive linemen that they've lost, because just recently Mike Filer ends up retiring. They lose Riker Matthews as well, but they've drafted very, very well. Darius Sirocco drafted in the first round in 2018. Looks like he'll just be able to step into that center job. They drafted so well on the offensive line, and they've been able to build that Canadian talent up to a point where, they have guys able to just step in, even if guys did leave to retire or, free agency.
Well, and they still have Van Zyl and Revenberg, who are 2 huge pieces on that offensive line. I think Riker Matthews kind of becomes the odd guy out with Sirocco being able to come in. Just, money wise, because Filer was still there. And now that Filer retires, maybe they might have been able to keep Riker Matthews. Who knows? But BC obviously wanted help on the offensive line, so it's kind of easy pickings when a guy like that comes up. The only issue with me on the offensive side of the ball for them is at receiver. They lose Mike Jones, Luke Tasker, Josh Crockett, and Brian Jones. They have Braylon Addison and Brandon Banks still. Don't get me wrong. They can break games open, but Marcus Tucker's going to have to step up as that third option and open up space for those guys too.
Yeah, and they still, they drafted, as far as offensive line goes, Jesse Gibbon. Mm-hmm. I think he was their second pick on the offensive line in the 2019 draft. He's still there, so they've still got a good mix of veterans and young players.
And you got to think Gibbon and Sirocco are going to be, they're going to be cheap talent.
Yeah.
If they can contribute.
Van Zyl, coming off being the most outstanding offensive lineman, he's got a hand injury right now. It does appear that he'll be able to play with it, maybe with a cast. To me, there's nothing more badass than watching an offensive lineman club people with a cast.
That the refs allegedly checked before the game, but he probably put a different one on.
Yeah. And I look at that receiving core for Hamilton, and Jalen Acklin had a nice year behind Addison and Banks, because they sort of had a lot of guys there that are, under 6 feet. They can run like the wind.
I totally forgot about him.
Jalen Acklin, yeah, he's still there. And at the end of the year, Marcus Tucker did start to show up a little bit. Devere Posey is now in Hamilton. I think Jalen Marshall had a game here and there towards the end of 2019. And, of course, they drafted David Ungerer, who was there looking to be the guy backing up for Steve, or not Steve, but Luke Tasker. Look at that. Look at
Rod.
I knew it. So we'll see if Ungerer gets to step in, and he's got the right passport there. I feel like with Tommy Condell, they're still going to be just a flying offense this year.
And I just the biggest question for me is going to be Masoli. Are we going to get that before the injury, or is that the Masoli we're going to get, or is he not going to be quite the same? Dane Evans proved he can do the job, but Jeremiah Masoli was MOP candidate, and it wasn't even close, really.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, if he comes back at 100%, I don't see this team not being in the Grey Cup.
It's how it always happens, though. You'll get these 1 and 1A, 1B, or whatever it is, and then if a guy struggles, then that's when the conversation really starts to ramp up.
Nobody comes into camp with a quarterback controversy. It takes something to happen for that to start.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm also interested to watch the running back position in Hamilton. I know that they bring in Don Jackson, but remember early on in 2019, Sean Thomas Erlington, he got the shot to start the season, and he was doing great, and it gave him a lot of flexibility as a Canadian.
Yep.
And through the 3 games, he got hurt early in the 4th. He had 193 yards receiving and 224 yards rushing. If you want to talk 1,000, Sean Thomas Erlington looked like he might have been the guy to be able to do it that year, and had that unfortunate injury. They've got a lot of weapons in the backfield as well.
And, Sean Thomas Erlington, I think that he probably gets a shot at the starting job again. I don't see why he wouldn't. But at the same time, if you have him and Don Jackson, you don't have to go heavy on one guy. This isn't Andrew Harris and Brady Oliveira. These are 2 guys that have proven that they can both start. Now, granted, pretty small sample size for Sean Thomas Erlington, but if he puts up the numbers he did to start the year again, and they have an insurance policy in Don Jackson, or, they need to spell him off, it's not a huge drop-off like a lot of other teams are going to have at that position.
And just another one of those examples where Hamilton drafted well. He was an 8th-round pick in 2017 and started off 2019 doing very well. I'm rooting for him, and hopefully he can do the same in 2021. Let's go to Montreal now, where they finished 10-8, second in the East Division in 2019. Now, here's the thing. We talk about a lot of Vernon Adams finally, going into the season, having a full training camp as the starting guy. Well, this is also Currah Jones' first full training camp as the head coach. Like, if you remember, I almost forgot about all this stuff. It was like 5 days before the season.
And we thought they were done.
In 2019. Yeah. Because Kavis Reed was still the GM at that time.
Yeah.
They end up firing Mike Sherman, and it was like, oh, here we go in Montreal. What a mess.
Not only that, you had the ownership stuff hanging over their head, and it just nothing seemed to be going right. At training camp in week 1 last year for Montreal, coming into week 1. It was a dumpster fire.
I remember questioning the decision to put Currah Jones in a head coach. That offense was really struggling up until, basically when he took over.
Yep.
And then he takes over.
It's almost like somebody who's played the game and knows the rules in this league actually made the team better at head coach.
That was a big thing. It's just like, not Mike Sherman, but Currah Jones and Vernon Adams Jr. It's like they found themselves, becoming this pair that ended up being one of the funnest teams to watch in the entire CFL. That was awesome.
And, and they had a personality. Not only was the gameplay, but the stuff between, Vernon Adams Jr. and Currah on the sidelines, and just the way that team, it just seemed like they really gelled once they fired Mike Sherman. And it made it didn't they though? It seemed like a completely different team. It went from being a laughingstock basically, and we didn't know what to expect coming out of training camp. We didn't expect them to improve much because of Mike Sherman. And Currah Jones comes in, and this team did a complete 180. And, some of the funner football games to watch in that season.
This is a team that really needs to improve the defense. They're the only playoff team from 2019 to give up more points than they scored.
Playing 3 games against Hamilton will do that, though, too.
Yeah, that's very, very fair. They're without their veteran leader on the defensive line. John Bowman's no longer with the team, but in comes Armando Sewell and Nick Usher, so I think they're going to be okay on the D line.
And you have Junior Luke there to spell guys off too, because I don't think he starts, but they added 2, bona fide guys on the defensive line and a guy for depth. I see nothing wrong on the defensive line with what they've done.
And they ended up losing the safety, Tyrell's favorite.
Yep.
Taylor Loeffler.
He's coming back.
Pour one out.
He's coming back.
He's going to come out of retirement. Who's he going to sign with?
Mike Edom can't play forever.
You just want that green and white Loeffler. I know you do. It does appear that Ty Cranston has the inside track at the starting safety job for Montreal. But they've got the new defensive coordinator in Baron Miles. And CFL fans know a little something about that name. He knows what it takes to play in the CFL. And I'm going to guess that he and Currah know a thing or two about each other as well. So
I would assume.
That coaching staff, I just feel like they're going to be so tightly knit, and the defense is going to have to improve, if they want to improve on, 10-4, it would be pretty tough to do as far as this season goes. But they did end up losing some guys on the back end as well. Keontae Evans, a big one, ended up going to Hamilton. Patrick Levels is still there. Greg Reed is still there. Maybe the secondary might be just an area where there might be some weakness in there. They need some time to come together. Or, you know what? There could be just some new guys that we don't know yet, no CFL experience, that end up showing us that we're a bunch of, or at least me, am a big old idiot when it comes to that.
Well, they bring in Don Termanson, and anybody who comes from Calgary obviously has done something right.
Yeah, right? Absolutely.
There's obviously a reason that he was on the opening day roster. You guys, Taekwon Glass and Money Hunter come in. They're not they're not going to be the best defensive backfield, but if these guys can play well off of each other, and everybody can kind of find a spot and get into the routine and learn the new playbook with the new guys coming in, it could be a little tough. But I can see this DB core being I don't want to say better because Keontae Evans, Taylor Loeffler, those are pretty big names to lose. But I can see these guys. It's kind of like a Moneyball situation where you don't just want to replace one guy with one guy. You got to do it by committee. And
losing Enoch Mwamba to Toronto, that's a big one as well. They still got the Canadian Chris Aki there, so the linebacking core taking a hit there. Montreal might be a team that
they also brought in DJ Lilama, though. That's not a terrible pickup.
There's another Canadian guy that they have that they'll be able to use, but that offense is one that I'm looking forward to watch.
Yeah,
Vernon Adams and Eugene Lewis. That might be if you want to put a fantasy lineup down, those guys, they'll be able to score points. I didn't even realize this because Vernon Adams, he supplies you with the rushing as well. He had almost 400 yards rushing in 2019, but he also punched in 12 touchdowns on the ground. If he does that again, he's going to be a pick every week, no?
Yeah. You're looking at a receiving core right now that has Rashawn Simonize in it, which, as a Canadian, you need one of them. It's nothing to shake a stick at, right? Naaman Roosevelt, if he can go back to what he was. And then you got Quan Bray, BJ. The list is... these guys aren't world beaters, but we haven't seen them really a whole heck of a lot because, whether it was BJ getting hurt in August or, Bray, we expected bigger things with the start he had, but he could be a 1,000-yard guy. Naaman can probably be they're going to have to. There be a lot of ball sharing in that wide receiver core if they want to get enough guys. If they want to, this is a core that could have 3 guys at 1,000 yards.
They could,
and in an 18 game season for sure. I think in a 14 we maybe see 2, and then in the backfield you still have William Stanback. So you got another weapon back there who can catch and run. So this offense could put up some gaudy numbers, but and the defense is just going to have to keep up.
Yeah, exactly that. B.J. Cunningham broke his wrist about halfway through 2019. He comes back in healthy. Jake Weineke was scoring touchdowns. Mario Alford, if I remember correctly, he was returning kicks toward the end of 2019. So he'll be able to do some stuff. I think they're just going to be a fun team to watch. In 2019 or 2021, I'm looking forward to seeing it. It looks like they've got the kicking situation too in Montreal. I know you're a big fan of the punting game. They got an Australian punter, Joe Zima, with an inside track on the starting job. He's a global pick. This is with Boris Beattie, ended up going into Toronto. It's only a matter if they want to go with 2 kickers, right? And this year, little bit smaller rosters might be a bit of a roster squeeze to get him in there, But the global thing, there's a bit of incentive there. If he can kick well and he's got that going for him, maybe we see the Australian guy kicking balls from Montreal.
If he is not going to cost you football games, then, I mean, that's a pretty easy decision, I think, right? Mm-hmm. And I mean, the only guy that's really going to cost you games is on the offensive line, but we won't get into that.
Never one to mince words. Brazilian Ty.
No, I mean, like you said, he's a global pick. Do they want 2 kickers? Probably not. But if that's what they have to do to get, their numbers and everything, and then if it works and they're winning football games, then I don't see a reason not to do it. Now, that could all change in week 3 with injuries, and they got to shuffle stuff around, but I mean...
Yeah, exactly. Let's go to Toronto. 4-14. 3rd place in 2019.
Like it can't get much worse.
Well, that's true. That they cannot lose. Well, they could lose 14 games, but it would not. That would be close to impossible.
Would fans start throwing waffles on the field? Or sorry, would the fan start throwing waffles on the field?
The fan. Before I said, well, most cores of teams are still intact. This is not one of them.
Not even close.
It's completely different team that we're going to see on the field in Toronto. And if you just look at the signings, Chris Edwards, the DB, Odell Willis on defensive line, John White at running back, Cordero Law at defensive line, Nick Arbuckle, quarterback, Eric Rogers, Jawan Breskeson, receivers, Arjun Colhoun, defensive back, Ricky Collins Jr., receiver, defensive lineman, Charleston Hughes, linebacker, Cameron Judge, offensive lineman, Philip Blake and Darius Bladek, defensive lineman, Drake Nevis, offensive lineman, Cody Speller, linebacker, Nicholas Shorthill. Rodney Smith just got cut by Edmonton. He ends up going into Toronto. Oh, yeah, Henoch Mwamba at linebacker as well. I mean...
So, out of the 46 guys they had on their opening day depth chart, 35 are gone. And that's just
wow.
Well, no, it's even less than that now because Darby's gone.
Wow. Like, they tore this roster up and down. It's completely...
And don't forget, it could get worse if McLeod Bethel-Thompson isn't their starter.
That's true.
There's
That's
another
very true.
one. Like, this is the biggest teardown I've ever seen. And I mean, at 4-14, it makes sense. And, Ryan Dinwiddie coming in first year kind of wants his own mark on the team. I get that. But holy, this is nuts. It's nuts.
If I had to bet, I think that McLeod Bethel-Thompson starts off as the starter. What do you think?
That would be my assumption because he's got the biggest sample size to go off of. And if Arbuckle isn't at 100% here, we know he tweaked his hamstring. Then I just don't see how you start Pipkin over McLeod Bethel-Thompson with what McLeod's done.
Pipkin's not going to start, but he's still only 24, and they're working on mechanics and stuff. But he does give them depth anyway.
Yeah, see, and he seems to be carving out a role, right? Like he's a part of the team for sure. But at the same time, if Arbuckle's healthy, there's no argument saying that McLeod Bethel-Thompson has chemistry with these guys. Because the only guy coming back is Levi Noel.
Yeah.
Armonte Edwards, gone. S.J. Green, gone. Darrell Walker, gone. Jimmy Ralph, gone. Charette, gone. Sibasu, gone. This is a completely different football team. And we said it can't get worse, but it might. A lot of these guys are not young.
Yeah.
I mean, look at the additions.
Well, and that's where And that's where Arbuckle has the advantage a little bit, right? Because he knows Dinwiddie's terminology.
Yes.
He knows the system. He's got chemistry with the receivers that he's worked with in Calgary before. But McLeod Bethel-Thompson, he somehow, and it's maybe my favorite stat from 2019, led the CFL in passing touchdowns. And it just seemed that everybody was
at the same time
getting hurt.
At the same time, when you're down by 30, you have to throw the ball.
Yeah. That is a big thing. There probably was a lot of garbage time happening there as well. I mean, they did lose a game on a missed field goal and Chris Rainey stepping out of the back of the end. Like, they lost in every possible way in 2019. But this is his third head coach, McLeod Bethel-Thompson, and his third offensive coordinator.
Who are we talking about, McLeod Bethel-Thompson or Taylor Hall?
Like, hopefully they can finally get some stability there. You're not going to win if you're just changing. And I know your hands get forced to fire guys when, you start a season 0-8, 0-9, and things don't look like they're going to get any better. But stability has to happen in the front office.
Like, do you think if
you
Calgary
have to try to model?
If Calgary starts a year 0-4, are they firing Dickinson? No. I think Dickinson go 0-18 and still keep his job.
Okay, that's a fascinating conversation.
It'll never happen, but it could happen.
Right. But that's it. Huffnagel and Dickinson, they've been together for how long? And that's what this franchise does. And if they can build something here with Dinwiddie and the crew in Toronto, they can finally start to get some stability there. And I think that translates off the field as well.
Yeah, like if you have constant turnover, it's really hard to get some locker room cohesion.
Yeah.
It's tough to get guys to want to come there. It's tough to get guys to want to stay. It makes it so hard to build a winning football team.
We've got the final cutdown day coming up here on Friday. There are some new names in Toronto that maybe we'll be watching this year. There's the wide receiver from Nicholls State, Damien Jean-Pierre from Louisiana. Just a burner on the field. And it's really hard to think that a receiver with no CFL experience will be able to make it onto that roster and start, but maybe he carves out a spot on the practice roster. Maybe he does return kicks or something and get onto there.
Brandon Banks.
There's going to be new names.
How many times do we say, how is Brandon Banks not getting the ball more? When he's returning kicks, he's making stuff happen, right? And if he's going to get a 5-yard buffer, it's not just he's not just waving fair catch every time. So he's going to get a chance if they want to use him and see. That's a good place to start. And if he can make stuff happen there, it won't take long for him to carve out a spot on the offense. If somebody goes down, I don't think he takes anybody's job right now with the names that are in that receiving core. But this is football and stuff does happen.
Boris Beatty is in as the kicker in Toronto, and they've also got a defensive lineman with a Super Bowl pedigree, Shane Ray. I think he got a ring with the Denver Broncos, has been playing well, has a great attitude on the defensive line, and that just brings me to the entire front seven for the Toronto Argonauts. If you just look at three of the vets on that D-line, Charleston Hughes, Cordero Law, and Drake Nevis, are you kidding me?
Yeah. I just... Where is all of the... come week one, who's it gone? Because there's no way that this receiver core and that front seven, there's no way you keep them all under the salary cap. There's no way.
It's a fair question. There's no doubt about it. There might be some surprises on Friday we'll see what happens.
Quote unquote. Like, I mean, we'll be surprised because it's a big name, but it's like, well, yeah, like they're probably $3 million over the salary cap right now.
And then you just look at the linebackers.
Yeah.
Enoch Muama, Cameron Judge, Dexter McCoyle, Bear Woods. I mean, with the injury issues Bear Woods has had in his career, maybe he's on the outside looking in. Dexter McCoyle just coming back from the NFL. I don't think he comes cheap. Judge and Mwamba, both Canadian. They're not cheap.
No.
That front seven.
It might only be a front four by the time Friday rolls around.
They might be the most expensive front seven in the CFL, no?
Probably the oldest D-line too, but
What a fascinating team to look at. I mean,
they look so good on paper, so good, but you just know there's so many changes coming in a week.
We'll see what happens with the defensive back group. There is some Canadian talent there. Arjun Colquhoun, former Edmonton player, Chris Edwards. I mean, Mr. 15 yards there.
I didn't even have to say that one. Yeah, that's good. Read my mind.
And I want to see if John White can stay healthy at running back. He looks like he comes into this year. He's healthy. He's ready to go. He's always been one of those guys. If he can put a full season on the field, he could be, the leading rusher, one of the most exciting guys to watch in the CFL. And they also got some talent, both from Saskatchewan with Bladek and Blake. Both of those guys played next to each other. That's big on the offensive line.
Don't undersell Cody Speller.
You're right. Yeah, that was stupid of me. Shame on me. Because anybody who plays and had a room on the Winnipeg offensive line, they're an all right player, aren't they?
Yeah, I would assume. I mean, when your running back's all hopped up on the goods on gear, it's pretty easy to look good. But I'd like to think that his offensive line opened the holes for him.
I'm just excited to watch the Argos. I want to see what
I want to see either
if they come
it's
together.
either going to be unreal or it's going to be an absolute car wreck that you can't look away from. I don't see them going 7-7. I see them going 2-12 or 10-4.
Okay, where do you have the Ottawa Redblacks? 3 wins.
0-14.
Oh, no wins.
No wins.
Wow. 3 wins in 2019. Last in the Eastern Division.
They're going to hurt a lot of wide receivers, but I just don't know how they win a game.
That's right. They're a team that's also very, very physical. And they've got Mike Benavides coming back as a coach. And like I said, look at the front seven in Ottawa. Cleon Lang, Stephen Charles. Charles was drafted by Edmonton in 2013. Bounced around the NFL a little bit. Came up to Edmonton in 2019. Didn't play a game. But the linebackers, too, Avery Williams, Micah Awe, and Don Unamba. Yeah. There is some talent in that front seven in Ottawa.
Oh, I should rephrase what I said. I just don't see the offense winning them a game. And your defense isn't going to win you 6-7 games a year. They can keep you in that many, but they're not going to win you straight out. I just don't see their offense putting up the numbers necessary to win in this league.
Yeah, that doesn't happen often in the Canadian Football League.
You're not going to win. You're not going to win enough games to get into playoffs winning 18 to 15. That's not going to happen.
They're not going to win, 42-40. It would be like
no, they're going to lose 42-4.
I was gonna say if they win ugly, 18-13 or something like that. Yeah. They're going to need to control the ball. That's all it comes down to. And Paul LaPolice has become very good at that. Although that was in Winnipeg, and there was a different group there.
Who is controlling the ball on this offense between You need to have a running back, and you got Timothy Flanders, Moses, like, what are we doing? I don't even know why we're talking about him.
I mean,
am I wrong?
You hate this team.
I hate this team so much right now.
And it appears Brendan Gallanders is a little bit banged up as well.
Oh, perfect. That's just what they need at the running back position.
Like, it's all on Matt Nichols to protect the ball. Like, that's what has to happen. I mean, Anthony Coombs finally comes in. He's healthy. He's a bit of a Swiss Army knife on the offense. I just see it being a real struggle for them.
Yeah.
They lost two very good offensive linemen. Evan Johnson goes to Saskatchewan. Alex Mateus ends up retiring. Brad Sinopoli retires.
Caleb Hawley's gone.
The offense is very hurting unit.
You talked about the additions that they had on defense. Like, they still lose Anthony Chaffee, which, I mean,
yeah,
it's not an easy guy to replace. I mean, the amount of guys they've brought in, though, I mean, you do it by committee, but I just don't see how this team is going to be successful. If you want to play a ball control game, you need to have a running game. I just don't see how they're going to do that.
Mm-hmm. As far as maybe a new name to watch, receiver Ryan Davis coming from Auburn, who's actually one of the Patriots' final cuts in New England in 2019, played for the Tampa Vipers in the XFL with Mark Trestman. He's Auburn's all-time leader in receptions, and they're trying to maybe find a receiver. They had 19 receivers.
Oh, my God.
At training camp. Somebody needs to stick out, right?
Or it's just going to be a muddy mess.
Right.
Like,
I know some people are excited about Daniel Peterman. Went to McMaster.
I mean,
maybe he's their new Canadian that Matt Nichols will look to. I'm not sure. But the offense doesn't excite me.
no.
I'm trying. I'm telling you.
Like, it's gonna be.
I'm doing my best.
It's gonna be week 4, and we're gonna hear the cries for Dom Davis to start football games again. And I'm just not in the mood.
That can't happen.
You know it's going to if they're 0-4.
Paul LaPolice has a tall order, doesn't he?
Oh, this is he's a great coach, but I mean, you look at the system and the players that he had. Completely different offensive set. And a back that arguably is one of the best we've ever seen, unaided or aided, doesn't matter. The offensive line, that they built there, and dominant offensive line.
Yeah,
they built that offense around the running game, and supplemented it with guys like Darvin Adams, who could stretch the field. And, they bring in Nick Dembski, and they added pieces where they needed to and made it work for them. That's not happening here in Ottawa. It's not. It might, but it's not happening this year. It's going to take a while. It's going to take us 2 or 3 years, and then, we might start to see something that resembles a team, I wouldn't call it similar to Winnipeg, but the same idea that he's trying to make, where he needs to bring in a running back somehow that can carry the workload. Because if you have Matt Nichols, you're gonna have to play a ball control game. Am I wrong?
You're not wrong. He's gonna need to manage it.
So I mean, you said it this time. I have,
and he
zero
hasn't
faith.
even practiced in a week.
Do you really need to practice 3-yard tosses to your running back, though? Maybe Dom Davis starts week 1.
Oh, God. I will say this about Lapo. He will have the game plans in place that
he's not going to get cheated.
His players, they'll be prepared, And if the game doesn't get away from them, they'll be able to fight.
Yes.
And he'll have a game plan in place for the players that he has.
Yes.
So
he's not going to get out-coached. Paul Epleese will never get out-coached.
No.
After 2010.
We know that.
Or 2009.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. They'll be as ready as they can be.
But I just don't think it's there.
Yeah.
I mean, like we said, Lewis Ward is probably going to be the highlight of this team again.
Hey.
Which I'm totally fine with.
If they can get into field goal range. If they can get into field goal range, then that's probably a success for that offense.
Yeah, I mean, baby steps, right?
Yeah. This episode of Two and Out is brought to you by the Calgary Foundation. Proudly supported community needs for 65 years. When you make a gift to the Calgary Foundation, it's a gift that keeps on giving. The Foundation's knowledgeable staff will provide advice on the community's most pressing needs, keeping your interests at heart and helping you give back in a way that is meaningful for you. Your contributions are invested in an endowment fund that provides a permanent source of funding, allowing you to make an impact now and forever. If you're a professional advisor creating a giving plan for a client or a donor wanting to give back to the community, discover a wealth of resources at calgaryfoundation.org to learn more, or check out Calgary Foundation's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube channel. There it is. We are a week and a half away from the start of the 2021 season, and next week, just after the long weekend, we'll be back with the West Division preview. That's going to be a fun one, too.
That is, that's going to be a mess. But, in a good way. It's not going to be Ottawa Red Blacks. It's going to be, the opposite end of the spectrum.
Have a fantastic long weekend. I guess, does all of Canada have the long weekend? You working the long weekend, Ty?
We don't even know yet. I just got.
Oh, you don't even know
I just got
yet.
back.
All right.
I just got back, man.
All right, buddy. Have fun this week.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna have a blast. I made so many huge, tiny mistakes on the week off.
Oh, did you?
Wow, I mean, I got home late a couple times.
How much weight did you gain?
By late, I mean early. I think I only gained a pound because I came back home 2.5 pounds lighter than when I came to camp, and I was a pound heavier than when I got home. So, I mean, when you drink a bar out of Bud Light, you're bound to put on a pound or two.
Rate, review, and subscribe on your favorite podcatcher. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks for listening. Find more great shows like this at CF Pod Network on Twitter.